Okay, you just finished basic training, and now you have some defensive skills you can pull out whenever you need them, as well as some strategies to start going on the offensive against this addiction. Although these will all take some practice to get down, that's no problem. I mean, you're not scared by a little bit of work, right? If these skills and strategies were the only thing you took away from this program and you ended now, we'd be excited at what you could do in months ahead. As you get stronger and stronger, you will become more and more successful in avoiding the traps that used to ensnare you. Okay, you're probably thinking, that's great. Help me win more battles. I do want that. But what about the rest of my life ahead? Am I going to be fighting these battles forever? Some people say this will always be a battle for you, that you'll always struggle with this. Don't believe that. We don't. With a smart, focused effort, you can get to a place where you no longer struggle and are eventually completely free from your addiction. Remember what we said earlier about brain plasticity? We weren't joking. If the actual physiological patterns in our brain can change, what does that mean about other patterns in our behavior, thoughts, and even our desires? You got it. They can also change and evolve over time. Although you may still have more vulnerability to pornography than someone else, over time, the weight of addiction can eventually get lighter and lighter to the point where you don't even feel its presence in your life. If you're serious about pursuing this kind of deeper level of change and freedom, then it's time to take this to the next level of the fight. What exactly do we mean? Rather than hacking at the branches of the addiction, what if we decided to dive deeper, getting at the roots of your challenge in a way that would help you move out of this trap for good? Think about the last time you were in a dark room. If you wanted that to change, what did you do? Did you try turning off the darkness? No, of course not. Obviously, it makes no sense to attempt to make physical darkness go away by shutting it off. And yet we often assume this will work with emotional and mental darkness. Rather than trying to turn off the darkness in a room, the answer is turning on the light. In the laws of the universe, light governs darkness. Once light comes, darkness has to leave. You see, darkness cannot exist where light is. In fact, darkness, by definition, is the absence of light. Simply put, if we want to really get away from pornography, we can't focus all our energies on battling the darkness itself. We have to focus some energy on not only turning away, but also turning towards something else. What if you started filling up your life with other things, activities and habits that begin to fulfill you and start to form the life you've always wanted to live? Could moving this direction actually mean the addiction eventually has to leave? Each step strangling and choking its power? Rather than only finding more ways to resist the addiction or fight the darkness, it's time to talk about filling up your life with light by creating healthy habits that make life so fulfilling that pornography will become a nuisance. In summary, you've naturally been focusing a lot on what not to do, which is understandable and important. However, we're talking about shifting the main focus to a different place. What to do. So, what should you do? What kinds of things and activities are we talking about? To help you explore these possibilities, we decided to look at the research and find anything that may be setting you up to be vulnerable to addiction. It's important to know that while you will sometimes hear talk of the cause of an addiction, there is no single cause of pornography addiction, not one thing responsible for it all. There are many things that can set us up for addiction. Scientists call these contributors risk factors or vulnerabilities. Based on risk factor studies, we've identified several different areas that deserve some attention. Because there are lots of them, we've summarized them in a few surveys for you. In this module, you'll be able to take the Fortify Yourself inventory, which will help you recognize areas of vulnerability and strength in your life. One thing that can set people up for any kind of addiction is a difficult past experience, especially if it hasn't been resolved. There are a lot of different challenges that can come up in your life, such as losing a family member or a friend or abuse. Let's take a moment and focus on abuse of any kind. We used to think abuse was rare and only happened to a small segment of the population, but society knows better now. We now know that several forms of abuse are far too common, especially to children. Sometimes abuse comes from a neighbor or a stranger. Other times it comes from someone right in your own family. from people who are supposed to be there and protect and care for you. It can be hard to understand why someone who is supposed to love you would hit you, slap you, or physically hurt you in any way. That is called physical abuse, and it's not right. It's also difficult to understand why someone who is supposed to love you would call you names and say other things about you that would make you feel worthless. That is called emotional abuse, and that is also very wrong. Both of these types of abuse can lead an individual toward addictive behaviors. This happens in most cases because the person who was abused often looks for an escape from a hard reality that they don't know how to deal with properly. However, there is another type of abuse that also deserves discussion. Can you guess what it is? We'll give you a hint. It has been closely linked to pornography addiction. That's right, sexual abuse. It's hard to understand why an adult would do something sexual to a child. There is also no excuse for that. None. What you may not know is that there is a significant link between abusing children sexually and pornography use. Isn't that interesting? An individual's insatiable appetite for pornography can lead that person to act out their fantasies on those around them. Children are often targeted because they are young and can be controlled. But not only are there links between sexual child abuse and pornography use amongst abusers, but there is also a predisposition to use pornography among the abused. Did you catch that? All right, it's important, so we'll say it again. Many people who were abused as children grow up struggling with their sexuality and often turn to pornography to escape hard realities. If abuse of any kind has happened to you in the past, you need to know something right now. No matter what you think, it's not your fault. You did not deserve to be treated that way. No one does. And you don't have to let those past challenges continue to mess with your life. And there's another kind of abuse that many don't recognize. It is witnessing others get abused, such as another sibling or one of your parents. Witnessing abuse to a parent or sibling can be extremely painful and traumatizing. If you have experienced or witnessed any of these, physical abuse, emotional abuse, or sexual abuse, it's almost certainly one of the things that's making it harder for you to turn away from pornography. Because experiences of abuse are so traumatic and painful, they often lead to many other problems, ranging from depression to anxiety to even eating disorders. This happens because our brains and bodies were designed to be loved and protected, not attacked. When trauma occurs, the healthiest thing to do is recognize what happened and that it was wrong. Try to understand why it took place and move forward. But this isn't what usually happens. Instead, we often ignore painful experiences and suppress them and pretend like they didn't happen. We try to avoid talking or thinking about what happened, hoping that maybe the effects will just go away. This kind of pain usually just doesn't go away on its own. It still bothers us somewhere in our subconscious. It weighs us down. We still hurt from it, so we look for some way to hurt less, ways to feel better. Pornography can become a distraction from the pain, our drug of choice. Fortunately, there are many healthy ways to get rid of this weight. One way is to lean on somebody else. It takes courage to really share and confide within someone else, even when it's with someone you trust. You may wonder, what's the point about talking about this if we can't go back in time and change anything? Wouldn't people be better off just forgetting about it? While it's true that it can be unhealthy to dissect everything about a painful experience, it's also true that the past can continue to negatively influence us if we don't face it in a healthy way. Like secrecy with addiction. Secrecy about past abuse can strengthen that abuse's hold over us. Breaking that secrecy can allow us to start healing at the deepest level. We're not talking about doing anything dramatic. In fact, what we're suggesting is that you just talk about any past abuse with someone you trust and love, and who you know loves you. Set aside a time with that person, explaining ahead of time that you need privacy in a time when they can give you their full attention, and then share with them what happened to you. Then take a breath and talk to them. Although it can be hard to open up about such a difficult topic, trust us, you will feel relief in doing so, and not just over the short term. Talking out hard experiences can help you know how to process them and learn what you need to do to let them pass so that you don't have to keep carrying around the pain they cause forever. If it makes you more comfortable, you can talk with someone who has professional training, such as a school counselor or a therapist. These kinds of professionals can help you talk about and process the experience. Well, what if you're not ready? That's okay. When you're ready, you'll know. Just plan on doing it at some point. As you move in this direction, you can even come to the point where you're able to consider something like forgiveness. Well, hold on, you might be thinking. How could I forgive someone that did such horrible things to me? We get it, all right? This isn't an easy thing to consider. Eventually, in order to move on and stop carrying this burden, forgiveness may need to be a part of the process too. One of our favorite quotes is from Paul Bosey. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future. Don't make the mistake of thinking that just by forgiving someone, you will be indicating what that person did to you was right or okay. That is not true at all. What they did to you was wrong, and it will never be right. Perhaps the most important thing to remember about forgiveness is that it's not for the person who hurt you. It's for you. Once you sincerely forgive, you'll notice a weight lifted. It's gone. You'll start to feel empathy for the abuser, and you'll see yourself rise to a new sense of freedom. It's worth it. We promise. We live in a society that throws many things in our face that seem to demand a response. Like in one commercial, it says, "Obey your thirst." So maybe it's not surprising that many of us end up getting swept away with lots of different habits. Some good and others not so good. Do you know anyone that struggles with their weight? How about a 7-hour-a-day TV watcher? Or an 8-hour-a-day gamer? Or someone who won't stop shopping even when their credit line has run out? You got the picture. Self-control isn't easy in a society that serves up 100 quick and immediate ways to feel better now. That's pretty much why we're here, to help you gain control of your life. Like we said before, we're not here to give you a quick fix to your problems. We want to give you long-lasting solutions and ways to feel better tomorrow and every day after that. If you can't direct your own life, then you've given that control over to someone or something else. Self-control is a crucial part of a healthy, happy life. Those who don't have it end up hurting themselves and those they love immensely. That's because relationships and love require sacrifice. And if you don't have the ability to let go of the immediate gratifications in life, then you won't be reliable and constant in a relationship. Rather than being guided by the needs of others, you'll be driven by whatever feeling you're having in a given moment. In fact, research shows that one area of addictive struggle can feed into another. For instance, if you binge on a ton of donuts, in the hours afterward, you're probably more likely to turn to pornography. Now, why is this? It's actually pretty simple. These compulsive habits are exercising the same general pathways, sparking the same kind of chemical rush that is seen in pornography. In this way, each time you engage in any addictive habit, you're priming the brain, greasing the wheels in a sense, to want more pornography. As you saw in the Fortify Yourself inventory, many kinds of addictive habits can set someone up for pornography addiction. Some who struggle with their temper, for instance, by getting angry easily and regularly, are also more likely to have a pornography problem. The same is true with a compulsion to inflict self-harm and cut oneself. If you struggle with any addictive behavior, such as gambling, excessive shopping, alcohol, drugs, anger, self-harm, overeating, binge eating, undereating, whatever, it's probably feeding and fueling your pornography problem as well. When several addictions exist together, it can get especially discouraging. You may hear from others, "You're just an impulsive person," or "Maybe you've got an addictive personality." No, don't believe them. Remember, it's very common for several addictions to exist at once. And even more to the point, this isn't who you are. We said that before, and we'll say it again, and we'll say it to you personally if you want to call us on the phone. The good news is that as you take control of one addiction, it will start to loosen the other's grip. Another way of thinking about it is to recognize that if you're struggling with multiple addictions, they are actually the same problem. Namely, turning to something as a fix to escape from the discomforts of life. That's the definition of any addictive behavior. So think about your life. What other addictions or compulsive behaviors do you see? Are there ways that you try and escape from the discomforts of life other than through pornography? I mean, we bet you never considered that those other behaviors could be linked to your pornography addiction. But they are. Okay, so now you're thinking, now what? How can I get rid of my addictive behaviors? Wait, didn't we talk about something like this in the last module? Yeah, that's right. In fact, nearly everything we discussed in basic training can help you with pretty much any other addiction. So next time you want to turn to a quick fix, try using STAR or leveraging one of the other strategies against whatever you're facing. Some of the most interesting things that influence any addiction, including pornography, are basic things such as sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Okay, you're thinking, how do my eating, sleeping, and exercise habits influence my addiction? Well, we'll tell you. Across many research studies on lifestyle factors that affect addictions, some things that come up loud and clear are the big three: nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Each of these things makes a huge difference in the quality of our mood and overall mental and emotional well-being. Both separately and in combination, they impact anything from depression and anxiety to how well we can focus our attention at any given moment. You didn't need any scientist to tell you that, though. Just think of the last time you binged on Halloween candy or spent the whole day inside just sitting around. How did you feel? Sometimes things that can feel so good in the moment can make us feel not so good later on. When we pay attention, we begin to notice how much these little patterns of sleep, eating, or exercise impact our mood. When we don't feel well, it's all too easy to scramble once again for some way, any way, to feel better. That's what we explored earlier. That our attempts to avoid the discomforts of life often set us on the path toward using. Whenever the body is unbalanced, it will be more likely to crave anything and everything to try to find relief. So in addition to all the other things you're doing to get stronger, you can also fortify yourself by improving your basic well-being by making some adjustments in your overall physical lifestyle. Let's take a look at your sleeping habits. A recent study by the National Sleep Foundation found that during the school year, most American teenagers aren't getting the sleep they need. Sufficient sleep is especially crucial for anyone wanting to find true recovery from addiction. Why would this matter? It's simple. Your brain and body actually recharge and repair during sleep. And when we go without it, our ability to reason and think clearly is impaired. Did you know that studies have actually shown that a sleepy driver is just about as dangerous as a drunk driver? Bottom line, a tired brain and a cloudy mind will leave you vulnerable to whatever cravings hit you. A lack of sleep can inhibit your judgment, and when that urge to use pornography comes around, you're less prepared to fight it. Make healthy amounts of sleep a top priority. If anything is getting in the way of getting enough sleep, take it very seriously, because if it's getting in the way of your sleep, then it's also getting in the way of your recovery. In addition to sleep, another way to recharge your body is to check what kind of fuel you're giving it. Have you ever tried putting maple syrup or Kool-Aid in a gas tank of a car? We're not asking you to try this at home, but what if you did? How far would you get in that car? I know it sounds dumb, but let's be honest. We're sometimes just as dumb with our own body by skipping breakfast, scarfing down stuff that we don't really need or want, and denying it sleep. How can we expect it to run well? When the body doesn't run well, you're not going to have as much energy and strength to do what you really want. You're going to be more liable to being swept away into the addiction cycle. So what can be done? Don't worry, we're not talking about cutting out certain kinds of food and becoming a health nut. No, we're not even talking about telling you what things you should or shouldn't eat. Rather than listening to anyone else tell you what to eat, why not listen to your own body? We're just talking about paying closer attention to what your body needs and wants. Being hungry or tired can make anyone vulnerable to a relapse to pornography or any other addiction. All right, let's finish up this discussion with one more thing. While recharging your body through rest and good fuel is important, if you really want to supercharge it, then try something really powerful: moving around. Although there is a ton of discussion about physical activity these days, Americans still do a ton of sitting around. So what's so wrong with sitting? Nothing, of course, unless you don't do anything else. Without movement and activity of some sort, we are starving our brain in another way and setting us up for the same old patterns. What about the reverse? What if we bumped up our activity level? In the late 1990s, Dr. Von Prague and his colleagues at the Laboratory of Genetics at the Salk Institute in San Diego, California, showed that exercise increases neurogenesis. That's when new brain cells are made. When you exercise, a flood of oxygen heads to your brain and a number of other processes are triggered that help your brain to grow. So by exercising, we're actually rewiring the brain in a healthy way and giving our brain an extra boost to function at peak performance. We're not saying you need to become an Olympic gold medalist. We're just talking about moving more. Rather than trying to change something dramatic, it can be quite helpful to find ways to slowly increase your level of physical activity. While sometimes a specialized program can be helpful, there are also other ways to increase physical activity in your life. Let's get creative. Taking the stairs rather than the elevator. Not driving or asking for rides everywhere you need to go so you can walk or bike. Fully participating in activities during gym class at school. Trying out hikes or trails in your area. Spending time at a park. Getting friends together to play sports. Doing a few sit-ups or push-ups before jumping in the shower. If you drive, parking at the back of the parking lot when you head to the mall. Getting a bike at a yard sale. Studies are showing that poor health can cause us to be more susceptible to impulsive decisions. Fighting to develop better health habits will indirectly help us fight the larger battle against porn. Let's do it. Did you know that low self-esteem can actually make you more vulnerable to addictive behaviors? Why do you think that is? After you think about it for a second, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? The worse you feel about yourself, the more you're going to seek out ways to feel accepted, important, and in control. Oftentimes, we turn to pornography because it gives us a false sense of connection with those on the computer screen or magazine page. However, by turning to pornography or any other addictive behavior to escape from feelings of worthlessness, we are actually pouring fuel on the fire. We have a friend that struggled with low self-esteem and pornography addiction, who described the cycle the two conditions created this way. It's funny, because of my low self-esteem, I found myself turning to pornography for relief. But afterwards, I would actually feel worse, and my self-esteem would get even lower. So without seeing the connection between the two, I would turn back to the very thing that was making it worse. His observation is consistent with research that clearly shows the same pattern. Turning to addictions such as alcohol, street drugs, or pornography for relief from depression, loneliness, or self-hatred pushes individuals deeper into those same emotional ruts. The deeper we go, the more intensely we look for an escape. Do you see the downward spiral? So low self-esteem can be made worse through pornography addiction. But get this, did you also know that porn can actually cause low self-esteem? Due to this pattern, our sense of purpose and self-worth can take a beating by any addiction. When we're giving our brain a dopamine rush over and over in response to a screen or magazine image, what do you think happens when we get up from our chair and turn back to real life? That's right, it's boring. Think about it. Real life can sometimes seem dull when compared to those videos and images. We can start to feel less and less enthusiastic about anything, and that includes ourselves, our worth, and our well-being. People with a pornography addiction simply stop caring that much about their own lives. They report feeling a loss of their own sense of hope, purpose, and meaning in life. And the cycle continues. This low mood then sets us up to think that we want and need more of that artificial dopamine rush of pornography. After all, when any of us feel low and terrible, we're going to want relief. And when we try to escape those bad feelings through pornography and other harmful substances, we're launching into this addiction cycle we discussed earlier. Is there another way to handle this emotional pain? What if we thought about a low mood or a feeling of hopelessness like an alarm system going off in the body? When your finger touches a hot stove, the pain you feel hurts, but it's also telling you something, right? It's telling you to take your finger off the hot stove. Well, what if your body didn't tell you that you should take your finger off the hot stove? We would have far more serious injuries and probably be missing a few limbs, wouldn't we? It's probably a good thing that we feel pain because it helps us make adjustments. Physical and emotional pain are similar. Although they hurt, feelings of being down, sad, anxious, or angry tell us something important about our lives. For one, this emotional pain may be telling you to get away from a habit as fast as you can. As you notice yourself feeling weighed down and in pain, Try taking that as motivation for everything you're practicing, learning, and putting into place. And here's the best news of all. As you practice the strategies you learned in basic training, guess what begins to happen? The reverse of the pattern above. Unlike pornography, which erodes your sense of meaning and purpose, being free from porn addiction helps you restore those back in your life. As you begin to taper off of artificial stimulation and acclimate again to healthy levels of emotion, the brain actually starts to remember that real life is pleasurable and worth enjoying. Notice how different this is from how we usually talk about self-esteem in society. It's common to hear that we just need to love ourselves and realize we're special. Our approach is different. Instead of trying to finesse feelings by simply saying, "You're great, just tell yourself that," we're talking about going to work, building a life you can believe in, a life where you're offering something to the world, where your energies matter, where you're making a difference for someone. As you do so, it will change everything. You'll notice a deep sense of purpose and contribution. Here are a few activities that can help you build this kind of life. Spending time with people that build you up rather than tear you down. Take some time to read and contemplate what you really believe. Set small goals and achieve them. Recognize your strengths and what you do well. Help others around you improve their situations. Get involved with and contribute to a cause greater than yourself. Look for the good in those around you, everyone around you. Work hard at turning your interests into skills. Speak in a British accent. I don't know, for some reason that always works. For many who face serious addiction, spirituality, whatever you define that to be, can also play a crucial role in finding freedom. Many find strength in turning to a higher power. If this is something that works for you, use it. While it's important to break free from your porn addiction or any addiction for that matter, having light fill the void in your life that pornography used to fill is what's really going to give you meaning and purpose. You're halfway through the Fortify program and you're doing a great job. Are you ready for another check-in? Okay. Let's spend a little more time with Star and focus this check-in on responding. Have you been practicing different ways to respond? Have you tried detaching yourself from the urge and watching it without acting on it? Yeah, not easy, is it? Some of you may be getting a handle on it and realizing just how powerful it can be. Others of you may be thinking, "I don't get it. I keep trying, but I just can't figure it out." Regardless of where you're at, this exercise will help you grasp the concept a little better and help you start applying it in battle. You see, the idea of simply watching the urge swell and subside over time without acting on it requires you to strengthen specific mental muscles you probably didn't even know you had. It's like being a first-time skier. It doesn't matter how many Warren Miller films you've seen. When you're actually on that mountain, you're going to have to use muscles you never knew you had in order to turn properly. Talking about what you need to do when an urge hits and actually doing it are not the same thing. We can explain that until we're blue in the face, but it may never sink in for you. It's not until you put it into practice and actually try it out that you will start to understand its true power. So let's practice. Rather than giving you a fabricated scenario to imagine, we want you to practice using actual mental muscles needed to successfully watch an urge and not act on it. Wherever you are right now, we want you to close your eyes and mentally step back from everything around you. Calmly listen to the sounds around you. Pay attention to the way your body reacts and how it feels. Recognize your thoughts and emotions. How do you feel in this moment? What are the thoughts that are popping up in your mind? Whatever they are, good or bad, detach yourself from those thoughts and emotions and watch them without doing anything. Mentally separate them from your body and observe them. Recognize that they have no control over you. If you feel yourself getting pulled into or controlled by a thought or emotion, quickly focus on your breathing to anchor your mind. Watch your thoughts and emotions take on a life of their own and eventually dissipate. How'd it go? Did it feel like time slowed down a little? Well, that's a good thing. By slowing down your decision-making process and connecting with your core desires, you are more likely to stay in control during a battle. Practice this over and over until you get the hang of it. Do it several times a day, urge or no urge. By working these mental muscles, you will eventually be strong enough to try this technique out on an actual urge and win.